Hi everyone, welcome back to English Digest. I'm Pat.
I'm still Leah.
And we're going to finish up talking about Alan Moore's Watchmen. We've talked about the story and given you an idea of what that's about. We've discussed Alan Moore's career and his intentions and the way he likes to write his graphic novels. Now we're going to focus again on Watchmen and exactly how it has affected things that have come after. We called it a seminal graphic novel. And
the granddaddy.
Yeah, we're going to see why. Speaking of which books, we talked about authors yesterday, but which particular books would you say have influenced you a lot?
Well, that's a really hard one. When I was younger, definitely enjoyed stuff like Catcher in the Rye, Franny and Zoe, which is also from the same author. But yeah, being a mom, I have to admit that there has been a period of a good 15 to 20 years where I haven't had a chance to read as much. And ironically, the books that end up influencing you more when you become a mom are things either kid-related or nutrition-related. So
yeah, I read a few.
Yeah, me right now, if it would be something interesting, it'd be Dr. Sarah Ballantyne's book on paleo dieting, which is,
okay.
But I mean, I don't do it, but I find it interesting.
Yeah, I read a book called like the about baby sleep patterns,
right?
And that was like, okay, that was very helpful for those early years
right?
about how we're going to get through the difficulties of bedtimes and waking up and getting the kid to nap and the importance of routines and all of that sort of stuff.
It is really important.
Yeah, so I've got some fantasy books and other books that have influenced me a lot as well. I mentioned Tolkien yesterday. Right. I can't not say that Lord of the Rings has been an influence on my life. It clearly has, but as you grow up, you find other stuff and you're like, wow, that really is, it's meant a lot to me and it's changed the way I thought.
Right.
So how has Watchmen done that for comic books? Let's read through day 3 and find out. Watchmen has had a profound and lasting impact on popular culture since its release. In addition to inspiring a movie adaptation, 2009, and a TV series, 2019, the graphic novel transcended the boundaries of comic books, reshaping the landscape of storytelling and influencing a generation of creators across various forms of media. One of the key cultural impacts of Watchmen was its deconstruction of superheroes. Moore presented flawed and morally ambiguous characters who struggle with complex ethical dilemmas, subverting the traditional idea of superheroes as champions of virtue. This approach altered the way superheroes were perceived, paving the way for subtler and more psychologically rich character studies in comics, film, and television. Without Watchmen, the popular heroes of the Marvel Cinematic Universe might still be little more than muscular crime fighters. The images and symbols from Watchmen have also entered popular culture. The blood-stained smiley face, the yellow and black logo, and the phrase, "Who watches the Watchmen?" have become iconic, recognized even by those who have not read the graphic novel. The questions posed by that phrase and other events in the comic can be seen in films like The Dark Knight and Captain America: Civil War, both of which explore moral ambiguity and the consequences of vigilantism. Moreover, Watchmen inspired a new wave of storytelling in the comic book industry, with its plot structure, non-linear narrative, and sophisticated themes. It motivated writers and artists to push the perceived limitations of the genre, leading to the rise of more mature and intellectually engaging comic book works. The cultural impact of Watchmen continues to be felt, cementing its status as a groundbreaking work of art.
We're going to move into the article now, and we're going to look at the first sentence. Watchmen has had a profound and lasting impact on popular culture since its release. Well, we know that now. It has had a profound, so profound means deep or meaningful, and lasting impact. So it has lasted for a long period of time. Some things might be deep and meaningful, but after 5 years, you forget why they are interesting. This is not the case with Watchmen. It has had not only a deep and meaningful, profound impact, but also a very lasting impact over a long period of time on popular culture since its release, since it was first put out into circulation.
And some of these are more obvious ones, and some of these are less obvious ones. So let's deal with the obvious ones first. In addition to inspiring a movie adaptation, 2009, and a TV series, 2019, the graphic novel transcended the boundaries of comic books, reshaping the landscape of storytelling and influencing a generation of creators across various forms of media. So yeah, obvious effects on popular culture. The Watchmen adaptation in 2009. An adaptation is where you take something that's in one medium, a comic book, a novel, and you change it into another medium. You make a movie from the book.
That's
you make
right.
a TV show from a comic book. You will notice these days there are an awful lot of movies and TV shows that are adaptations of comic books, of novels, of video games. You know, we had what was the
Pac-Man, the movie with Pac-Man.
Pac-Man, the Super Mario re-release.
Yeah.
We've had, and then Barbie was the big movie,
the
and
most recent
that's
one.
an adaptation of a toy.
That is, and also a TV series in 2019. So the graphic novel transcended the boundaries. I love to say that word with a little bit of emphasis. Transcend. It almost sounds like you should go up and over because the word means to go over and above and beyond, right? You transcend, you go beyond what is currently there. So he has transcended the boundaries of comic books. He's gone beyond what comic books were believed to be able to be, as we talked about before with him, going against conventions and stuff like that in his comic books. He has really figured out a way to just blow the top off of what comic books could be. He's reshaped the landscape of storytelling because he's doing these flashbacks and these subplots that you didn't think you could do before in a graphic novel. And he has really influenced, because of all of that, the future, right? The generation of creators that are out there now or are coming now and in various forms of media. So not just in the graphic novel area. He's also maybe influencing folks in the way they make films.
Writers.
The way they write, or maybe even somewhere in music as well.
So one of the key cultural impacts of Watchmen was its deconstruction of superheroes. Now, deconstruction can simply be the opposite of construction. You're breaking something down instead of building it up. But specifically here, it's a method of critical analysis. You're looking at something and finding out, how does this work? What are the sort of underpinning elements that do this, that make it what it is? So when you're deconstructing something, you're taking a look at a particular topic and you're breaking it down into all its component parts to figure out how does it work, what does it mean, what are the key elements, and what can we do with them? So taking superheroes and looking at what it means to be a superhero. What are superheroes?
Sometimes deconstruction can be a slippery slope. My parents are both English professors, and they taught literary criticism. And they said, that, which means, the analysis of the literature and the critical analysis of how a piece of literature goes together. And they said the thing a lot of times they hated the most was the deconstruction of the literature because, it could just get so nasty. Curious, don't know if that's the case here with the superheroes, but a deconstruction of the superheroes means we're not doing our average, hey, I can take on all the bad guys. You're doing something different here. What are we doing? Well, Moore presented flawed and morally ambiguous characters who struggle with complex ethical dilemmas, subverting the traditional idea of heroes as champions of virtue. So his superheroes have been deconstructed down into something different. They are no longer the perfect guy or the perfect gal. They are flawed. They have problems. They are morally ambiguous, which means they don't really know what they believe is right or wrong in a moral society. And they're struggling with these ethical dilemmas. And ethical here is in terms of like the way society views right and wrong. And along with morality, ethics goes more into society's views of what's right and wrong. And
this subverts the traditional idea of superheroes as champions of virtue. So when superheroes first appeared, you go back to Golden Age kind of Superman and some of these others. Yeah, they are these perfect beings. They are the heroes who save the day. Sure, their villains have got strong powers, but in the end, by being honest, true, good, right, they will win. And that is why they win, because they're good, true, right, and honest.
Just simply that.
Yeah, but subverting something is to kind of undermine that, take away that sort of established power, established idea or authority or something that everybody has kind of followed and going, well, let's do it differently. Let's see what happens if instead of following the law, the superhero decides he needs to break the law to do what's right.
What?
And that is subverting the traditional idea. So instead of saying these superheroes are the perfect men, the Ubermensch, I think is the phrase that goes with that, what if they're just normal people with difficulties, with problems, with scars in their past that have to deal with ordinary human problems?
So they're no longer the champions of virtue, the ones who are out there being, the hero for virtue, champion here. If you think of a champion, you think of a gladiator or something like that. This approach altered the way superheroes were perceived, paving the way for subtler and more psychologically rich character studies in comics, film, and television. So in a way, this is super. This is fascinating. This is amazing. And it opens up the world of comics, and it opens up the world of graphic novels, because your characters no longer have to just be good. Right? Instead, they have changed. This approach altered. It means to change the way superheroes were perceived. And well, what did it do? It paved the way. What does that mean? It means it created a way that then everybody could drive on. If you pave the road, then you have a road that is perfectly good for driving on afterwards. You're putting down the pavement onto the road, or the cement onto the road. Cement's not right. Concrete,
yes.
Those words.
Yeah. So, and this meant that writers would start using subtler and more psychologically rich characters and doing rich character studies in comics, films, and television. So here we're not necessarily talking about the characters, but the character studies, the way we look at the character and talk about who is this character, what is important to them, how are they going to react, what are their problems, and how are we going to overcome them or not. And they're more subtle now, these character studies. They're more indirect, they're cleverer, they're not just, here's the villain, beat him.
And they're more psychologically rich, too, right?
So the villain is you. How are you going to beat yourself? And of course, like that, if you think about the way that superhero movies are, particularly The Dark Knight with the Joker and Batman, this is back like 2004 or something like that. That film, which we'll mention again later, that is a very deep film in terms of the superhero and the villain talking about, like, who are we, what are we doing, why are we doing it? How does the Joker corrupt Two-Face? How does Batman react? This is a rich character study. So we say without Watchmen, the popular heroes of the Marvel Cinematic Universe might still be little more than muscular crime fighters. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU, is this whole connected web of all the Marvel movies, characters, TV shows, internet series,
Doctor Strange,
everything that's
right?
On screen is the MCU.
And the they would be little more than muscular crime fighters if it weren't for the fact of Moore's writing with the Watchmen. Muscular here just means that you have muscles. So you think of Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was younger and before he was the governor of California, and he went boom, boom, and he had lots of muscles that would come out of his biceps.
Yeah, and we're saying that without this kind of change in the way that superheroes were perceived and how people thought, hey, we could write this character or this story, then the older superheroes were just kind of big, powerful guys or girls who saved the day. And that was basically the story. It was just create a new villain, find an interesting kind of way for them to fight, who's going to win. And that was the story. Now we're getting loads more detail. We're going to take a moment here to hand over to our Chinese teacher. When we come back, we'll be looking at some other influences Watchmen has had.Hello
everyone, 我是派老师。今天讲解的是12月28号 Unit 15第3天的课程。这个单元介绍的是 Alan Moore 的守护者。前2天课程内容分别介绍故事的主要情节，还有作者。这个单元最后一天要介绍的是守护者这部作品带给我们什么样的影响，在漫画界启发了许许多多的创新作品。有很多作家、艺术家都受到守护者的激励，更勇于突破框架，创作出更烧脑、让人手不释卷的作品。好，我们一起来看学习重点吧。请同学先看到第一段第一个句子，虽然是一个蛮基础的文法，不过老师要不厌其烦的提醒大家，请同学看到句子最后面 since its release， 通常看到 since 加一个过去的时间点。前面呢，大概99%的机会是要用现在完成式啦。Watchmen has had 这部作品守护者一直以来都有什么深刻的影响 profound， 然后呢，而且很持久、很持续 lasting impact， 对什么的影响就是 on。再来，我们看到第2个句子，他的作品当然啦，因为受欢迎，后来被翻拍成电影。A movie adaptation， 那就是把原本的小说改编成电影 A movie adaptation， 而且2019年呢也推出了电视剧 The graphic novel， 这部图像小说怎么啦 Transcended the boundaries， Transcended the boundary 就是跨越超越了樊篱，超越了漫画的樊篱。好，再来我们看到第2段第一个句子，守护者有一个关键的文化影响，就是对超级英雄的解构。好，这个 key cultural impact 是什么呢？ The construction of superheroes。 到底什么是解构？下面就有解释了，所以不懂不用担心。第2个句子，我们看到 Moore presented flawed and morally ambiguous characters。 一般传统上我们会认为英雄嘛，那英雄应该是非常的怎么样呢？有道德感。那在这里他们是有缺陷的 flawed 要加上 ed 才是形容词有缺陷的，而且游走在道德模糊地带 morally ambiguous。 再来，请同学看到第3个句子，他的这种写作方式呢，改变了大家对超级英雄的观感，就是我们看待他们的方式 The way superheroes were perceived， 我们看待他们的方式。那后面有一个分词构句，这样子的方法还有一个影响 Paving the way for， 那也因为是这种写作的方式，所以呢就为后面的人铺路 Pave the way for subtler and more psychologically rich character studies。 所以之后呢，大家在漫画里面、电影电视当中，对于人物的个性心理呢，就会描绘的更加的深刻，更加的细腻。好，再来，请看到第4个句子，就是 Without Watchmen， 没有这部作品。那这当然也是某种程度上的假设语气啊，因为实际上有这部作品，所以同学会看到主要子句的部分，助动词我们用 might。好，那没有这部作品的话，就会怎么样呢？这些漫威里面的这些英雄可能就只是什么呢？他们就只是肌肉发达的犯罪打击者而已。Might still be little more than， 那到底是多还是少？比较多还是比较少？那应该是不太多，所以就是不过是怎么样而已。
Let's now take a quick break.All
right, right, guys, so we're going to delve a little bit further into other areas where The Watchmen has had an influence on different kinds of, well, comic series or movies that are out there. Let's look at our first sentence here. The images and symbols from Watchmen have also entered popular culture. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, right? The things that you see in Watchmen. And you notice I often will say The Watchmen. That's actually not right. You have to watch out sometimes because like there are some bands out there. You could say Rolling Stones. They're The Rolling Stones, or Smashing Pumpkins. They're The Smashing Pumpkins, or Strokes.
I didn't know that. Yeah,
The Strokes.
The Smashing Pumpkins.
I'm pretty sure they're The Smashing Pumpkins. I might be wrong on that one. I saw them recently. They were good. But these images and symbols, and from Watchmen, not The Watchmen, right? Have also entered popular culture. So they're out there. Everybody's seeing it. For example,
we've got the blood-stained smiley face. This is the badge of the comedian, one of the characters who gets killed early. One of the real strong images on like the first page or two is his smiley face badge with blood on it. And it's just that image of, it's a yellow, happy, smiley face.
But
with a blood stain.
Something's wrong here.
Really two contrasting images. And then we've got the yellow and black logo, the Watchman, big bold letters and what that means. A logo is just a badge. It's a symbol of a company, of a thing. In this case, it's the title page of Watchmen. You could think of like the Nike swoosh as a logo, other stuff like that.
The comma guy who sits on comma coffee, that cute little moon
the white thing, the
cute.
Starbucks mermaid is a logo. And then the phrase, who watches the Watchmen, have become iconic, recognized even by those who have not read the graphic novel. So that who watches the Watchmen actually comes from a very old Latin phrase. I think it dates back to ancient Rome, and it's just the idea of who is making sure the people in power don't abuse their power.
Which really fits with Watchmen because you have these deconstructed superheroes that we've been talking about who do have this moral ambiguity. So isn't there a need for somebody out there to make sure our superheroes are doing the right thing as opposed to, going out and maybe hurting somebody or turning over a car or doing damage and stuff like that?
And that reflects in sort of modern society with the idea of like, who's policing the policeman to make sure the police are doing the right thing, which, that's a big whole other question right there.
It is, yeah.
But all of these things have become iconic. Something that is iconic is thought of as a representative symbol of something. It's a thing that's worthy of kind of being looked up to as a piece of art. It's an icon that people will use. I've known people who've used the bloody smiley face or the Rorschach face mask as like that's their Facebook profile picture for a bit when they were really into Watchmen. You see it on clothes and stuff. It's the sort of thing that's, it's now commonly seen and people will know what it is. And they go, oh, that's from Watchmen.
And you can also talk about the noun of it, an icon, right? So you have a fashion icon or a movie icon or, a film icon or something like that. So somebody who's big in that area and that you recognize without even knowing why you recognize that person. And in fact, here it talks about things being recognized even by those folks who have not read the graphic novel. So it's so iconic that everybody knows about it. I'll keep going there. The questions posed by that phrase and other events in the comic can be seen in films like The Dark Knight and Captain America Civil War, both of which explore moral ambiguity and the consequences of vigilantism.
Yeah, so if you think of The Dark Knight, there's stuff there's the quote like, you either like you're the hero unless you live long enough to become the villain or something like that, and then you're not the hero they want, you're the hero they deserve. The dark quotes from The Dark Knight.
Spider-Man with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, so those ideas are a big part of The Dark Knight. Captain America Civil War, it's this argument of Iron Man and his followers thinking we should have government oversight, and Captain America and his followers saying, no, we shouldn't. We should be independent. So that's that question, which is really at the heart of Captain America's Civil War. Some of these ideas wouldn't, and sort of what's right, what's wrong, this moral ambiguity of which side is in the moral right. Both and neither.
Yep.
As it's all, a lot of it goes back to some of these ideas from Watchmen. And vigilantism, being a vigilante is the idea of taking the law into your own hands, going, nobody's punishing the criminals, so I'm going to put on a mask and I'm going to do it myself.
And it actually doesn't require a mask. Some folks, when you're a vigilante, you just feel like the world is wrong and you should be out there to fix it or police it. But the problem is sometimes you'll often go too far. There was a vigilante, Bernard Goetz, in the 1980s in America, who shot some teens on a subway because he thought he was about to be mugged. He had the gun on him because he thought, I'm here to protect myself and the people around me. The ideas of a vigilante oftentimes might be good or well-meant in terms of, I'm going to help society, but oftentimes the viewpoint of a vigilante, what they do and why they do it is not really the right way to go about it. So they aren't the superheroes.
Yeah, I read one in Taiwan back in September, which was, there was a guy who'd seen an illegally parked car, and so he stepped on the windshield and smashed it with his foot. Like, okay, so the car's parked illegally, the driver is breaking the law, but then braking his car is also breaking the law. So what you should do is like call the police, something like that.
I wonder if Karens, the Society of Karens in America, are kind of vigilantes.
Maybe. But that's the idea of vigilantism. What are the consequences of taking the law into your own hands and saying, I'm going to fight crimes, not the police? So that's yet more effects of Watchmen. And then we've got even more. Moreover, Watchmen inspired a new wave, so like a new movement of storytelling in the comic book industry with its plot structure, non-linear narrative, and sophisticated themes. A non-linear narrative, and I did mention this in day one, is one that doesn't follow a straight line. It doesn't start at the start and go through the middle and reach a conclusion. There are threads going off here and there. You're going back in time. You're exploring other characters and other ideas. You're going off to see, well, this contributes towards the plot. Like Watchmen there's this through story of a kid reading a comic book in the comic book. But because superheroes are real, no one reads superhero comic books in this alternative world.
Okay.
They read pirate stories. But if you actually read the pirate story, it's foreshadowing the events of the real plot of Watchmen. But it takes a while for you to realize that. So it's this kind of non-linear, sophisticated, clever ideas which you really need to kind of think about, and you're probably not even going to understand until you read it like the second or third time, that kind of turns it from a graphic novel into literature.
Well, I do think it's interesting that you mentioned that about non-linear, that you don't really know where you are. A lot of people, if they might have like problems with mental issues or so, they might have very non-linear thinking. So they're not saying X equals Y and it makes sense, right? There's a process that doesn't go in a straight line for them when it comes to the way they think. Here we go, following on. It motivated writers and artists to push the perceived limitations of the genre, leading to the rise of more mature and intellectually engaging comic book works. So it motivated folks to do something, right? The whole new way of writing with this plot structure and this non-linear narrative and these sophisticated themes, it motivated people. It motivated them to do what? Well, create more stuff like this, to push the perceived, so the conceived, the way things are viewed is the way things are perceived, limitations of the genre. So people had set perceptions or attitudes about what the limitations were of the genre, and Watchmen stopped that, or it pushed it and broke it. And this led to something. It led to the rise, the arrival and coming of more mature and intellectually engaging comic book works. So why more mature? Well, if you think about, for me, when I grew up, comic books I read were Archie with Betty and Veronica and Jughead, which later became Riverdale, which is more mature. But when I was a kid, that was what I read, and Casper the Friendly Ghost and stuff like that. But these are more mature. They're adults in real situations dealing with real issues like murder and intrigue, right? The political intrigue.
So we conclude by saying the cultural impact of Watchmen continues to be felt, cementing its status as a groundbreaking work of art. Cement is being used as a verb here. To cement something basically means to make it stronger and to fix it in place. If you think of you're going to cement a building, you're going to add cement to it to make the structure stronger. So this is a little more figurative. You are really, the fact that people are still thinking and talking about Watchmen, the fact that it's still having an effect really does cement or really fix and make strong its status as this groundbreaking work of art.
That's true. Groundbreaking here just means as a work of art that has never been seen before. It broke the ground when the ground was perfectly fine. It broke it, and now you have all these new things that come from it. It connects in with the seminal that we mentioned earlier, the seminal work of art, and kind of the grandfather of this area of art.
So, yeah, that really wraps up the effects of Watchmen. We're going to hand over to our Chinese teacher right now, and then we'll come back to wrap everything up.
接着第3段，请同学看到第2个句子 The blood-stained smiley face 在电影里面会反复，应该说小说的情节里面也有交代，会反复呢出现这个所谓的微笑的笑脸，那里面是沾了血迹的，脸上是沾了血迹的 blood-stained， 要同学记得这个要加上 ed， 一样是什么呢？复合形容词 The face was stained with blood. 好，那再来，请同学看到第3个句子，在逗点之后 both of which， 请特别要注意哦，因为没有连接词啊，那所以这个 which 就是代替前面的这两部影片都是在探讨这种所谓道德的模糊性，然后还有呢，就是 consequences of vigilantism。就是所谓的私刑。好，再来第4段，请同学特别注意到，这里呢，等于是在讲 Alan Moore Watchman 这个守护者，他对后面的这些作家到底有什么影响 ？Watchman inspired a new wave of storytelling in the comic book industry， 所以在业界呢，其实是启发了一种新的潮流。那再来，请同学看到第2个句子，蛮后面的地方哦，就是讲到他的这个作品呢，也让后面的漫画书变得更成熟 and intellectually engaging。Intellectually engaging 当然是一个好的字啊，表示这部小说这些作品很受人欢迎，会让读者喜欢。那什么样算是 intellectually engaging 呢？那就是会让你不断的去动脑，很烧脑的。好，以上就是我们针对这一课单元第3天所做的中文讲解。I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Okay, so we have finished our 3-day look at Watchmen. I'm not going to lie, there's a lot to go into here.
It feels like you could go even deeper,
Yeah,
right?
we have not really even sort of touched the surface of this. And I won't be offended if you guys are like, wow, that's a lot. I can't quite process it. What I would say is go ahead and check out the comic book. Think about what it's saying and doing, and then you'll start to get the idea as well.
It's something I plan to do because, man, this has got me intrigued.
So, yeah, we hope you've enjoyed learning about it. We hope you've enjoyed learning about some of these ideas and concepts we've been talking about, and just kind of like maybe broke a bit of ground in your mind thinking, okay, now there's some new ideas I can go out there and explore. But that's all the time we have for today. Thanks very much for listening. For English Digest, I'm Pat.
I'm Leah.
And we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
See you later.